Every swindler needs a costume. For Simon Leviev, it wasn't a ski mask or a forged ID, it was the sweetest good morning text you've ever seen. Wake up, Angel, the jet is leaving for Mykonos. At 2 a.m., that single line could scramble your logic faster than turbulence flips a coffee cup. Your pulse skips, your friends squeal in a group chat, and before your phone hits the nightstand, you're halfway packed for a fairy tale weekend. But what if that text, the one that made you grin into the dark, was actually step one in $1 million con? Back in 2018, Simon glided through dating apps and private terminals like a modern Gatsby with Wi-Fi. He flaunted a surname borrowed from a diamond dynasty, name-dropped exotic capitals, and framed each lavish moment as just the beginning of a shared future. The pace felt exhilarating, almost cinematic. Yet beneath the champagne bubbles lurked a ruthless psychological algorithm so efficient it could turn smart, cautious adults into unwitting financiers overnight. By the time the first bank alert flashed red, many victims were already negotiating their own denial because stepping off a private jet and admitting you've been duped feels harder than handing over cash in the first place. In the next 20 minutes, we'll peel back the glitter, line by line. We'll trace how love bombing hijacks brain chemistry, why a single fake crisis can deepen devotion, and how a Ponzi-style carousel of credit cards spun unnoticed across continents. We'll fast forward to 2025 through lawsuits, copycats, and a reality show rumor swirling in Dubai, to ask the question nobody likes to face. Why are we still falling for the love bomb formula 5 years after the documentary exposed it to the world? Fair warning, this story may rattle your trust radar, but stick around. By the end, you'll not only spot the red flags, you'll understand why they look so temptingly close to fireworks. Ready? Let's step onto the jet, before the illusion even flickers. Simon Leviev's magic trick began long before he ever sent a desperate voice note. It started at 38,000 feet, where the roar of a Gulfstream's engines could drown out common sense. In 2017 and 2018, his Instagram grid looked like the highlights reel of a private aviation broker. Gold-plated seatbelt buckles, crystal flutes brimming with Dom Perignon, the vague shimmer of some Mediterranean coastline 15 minutes after takeoff. Every photo carried the same caption energy. Business never sleeps, but never an exact address, never a clear timestamp. If viewers tried to match the jet's tail number to a charter registry, the post would vanish within hours. It was luxury experienced at shutter speed. See it, envy it, scroll on. Leviev's dates saw the spectacle up close. One Norwegian graduate student recalled receiving 3 WhatsApp messages: pack something elegant, passport, and a pin to Farnborough Airport before she could even text her best friend for advice. The jet, she said, felt cold museum perfect. Its galley stocked with monogrammed macarons and a box of cohibas no one ever lit. A single flight like that ran roughly $20,000, but victims later learned the card on file was already maxed by a woman who'd sipped Bellinis in the same leather seat just days earlier. The illusion was expensive, yes, but it only had to last the length of one runway. And Simon understood momentum. While wheels were still retracting, he'd lean across the aisle with a jewelry brochure or a faux confidential email from Leviev Diamonds on his iPad, speaking softly as if everyone else were paparazzi rather than strangers in his orbit. By the time the plane began its descent, future faking was in full swing, whispered plans for a Santorini summer home, gentle jokes about which parent would spoil their firstborn rotten. Neuromarketing experts call this tactic time compression trust. Move so fast, the brain skips due diligence and defaults to belief. Your sensory cortex is too busy cataloging caviar flavors to Google whether Leviev Diamonds has a London office. It doesn't. But the key wasn't the jet or the champagne, it was the story stitched around them. Simon rarely named a single hotel but spoke in sweeping brushstrokes. We'll land, grab the suite with the blue onyx tub, then hit the showroom. Every missing detail nudged his dates to fill the gaps with personal fantasies, turning them into co-authors of their own deception. And because the snaps looked so effortlessly casual, no security detail in sight, no luggage check, they felt like a private documentary rather than a sales pitch. Leviev wasn't flaunting money, he was flaunting the illusion of infinite time, the one resource successful adults are always chasing. Just as the last fluted glass was cleared away, his phone would ping with a single ominous line. "My enemies are moving." The temperature in the cabin dropped. The stewardess closed the galley curtain. A new chapter was about to begin, and this one wouldn't taste like caviar at all. Minutes after touchdown, Simon's phone transformed into a fountain of devotion. Good morning selfies at 5 a.m., heart eye emojis every hour, voice notes that felt too intimate to replay on speaker. I've never connected with anyone this fast, he'd breathe as if confessing a secret. Neurologists call that flood of attention a dopamine barrage, tiny chemical fireworks that train the brain to crave the next ping. Pair it with luxury backdrops and the effect borders on hypnotic. You're no longer just dating, you're starring in a romance trailer stitched together by your own notifications. Then came the gifts. A single red rose bouquet so massive it needed its own Uber XL. A Cartier love bracelet to lock our destiny. A lease application for a London flat, your name already on the paperwork in brisk blue ink. Each gesture seemed wildly premature, and that was the point. By compressing 6 months of courtship into 48 hours, Simon triggered what behavioral economists dub time compression trust. Your rational filters lag behind the sensory overload, and skepticism feels almost rude in the face of such generosity. But the true genius of the love bomb wasn't excess, it was intermittent silence. After 15 straight hours of dopamine highs, Simon would vanish for 30 minutes, just long enough for your phone to feel eerily quiet. When he returned with an even warmer note, the relief spiked higher than the original thrill, forging what trauma specialists describe as an addictive reinforcement loop. Victims later compared the sensation to casino slots. Every new message felt like 3 cherries lining up, promising emotional jackpot. Finally, just as attachment peaked, Simon layered on vulnerability. A late-night whisper about childhood poverty, a blurred scar on his wrist, a hint that the diamond world isn't always safe. Those confessions weren't random. They were calculated seeds for the next act, where crisis would replace champagne, and loyalty would be measured in wire transfer receipts rather than emojis. A single voice note would tip the balance. Babe, I don't want to scare you, but my enemies are closing in. And suddenly, all that pleasure had a price tag. The first danger message always landed at night, time to hit when your guard was down and your phone light was the only glow in the room. Simon's voice shook in a hurried WhatsApp note. Babe, I can't talk long, my enemies found our location. Peter's been hurt, I'm freezing all my cards for security, I need you. Seconds later came the proof. A photo of his bodyguard Peter sprawled across an ambulance stretcher, shirt blood-soaked and eyes glazed with pain. The image felt too raw to fake, too urgent to question exactly as Simon intended. Psychologists call this move crisis bonding. By injecting sudden fear directly after an emotional high, the scammer drives cortisol through the roof, forging a bond deeper than any bouquet of roses could. Your mind races to problem solve, your heart races to protect the man who, only hours earlier, promised you a future. In that swirl of adrenaline and affection, logic shuts down. Victims later described the moment as living inside an action film, except they were also the financiers, asked to wire $25,000 just for 48 hours until Simon's security team could unfreeze his accounts. The genius wasn't just the fake ambulance photo, it was the intermittent reinforcement loop behind it. Every transfer you made was met with effusive gratitude. You saved my life, my love, followed by another burst of silence that reignited fear. Dopamine and cortisol seesawed until the chemical cocktail felt indistinguishable from destiny. Behavioral finance experts now flag this pattern as the romance fraud equivalent of a slot machine. Unpredictable wins, unpredictable threats, always one more pull. And while you scrambled for higher credit limits, Simon moved on to the next city already primed to love bomb a new match with your borrowed money. But the carousel of panic had only begun to spin. What happened when the emergency messages hit 3 girlfriends in the same hour would expose a scheme bigger than any single love story. In February 2019, a trio of Norwegian journalists at Verdensgang finally connected the dots across a dozen frantic victim emails. Their exposé, titled simply "The Tinder Swindler," charted credit card statements from London to Helsinki, pinned flight manifests to WhatsApp screenshots, and identified the jet-setting Romeo as one Shimon Yehuda Hayut, a petty fraud fugitive who had already skipped parole in Israel years earlier. 2 months later, Greek police arrested him at Athens airport with a fake passport. By December, he was back in Tel Aviv, facing a 15-month sentence for earlier crimes, though he served barely 5. Still, the VG article traveled further than any Interpol notice. Within weeks, dating app forums buzzed with warnings, and a half-dozen women realized the man who'd called them soulmate was copy-pasting the same voice notes to strangers. Yet the real detonation came 3 years later. On 2nd February 2022, Netflix dropped The Tinder Swindler, a slick, breath-snatching documentary that spliced luxury selfies with frantic 911-level audio. Overnight, Simon Leviev became the algorithm's favorite villain, trending above Inventing Anna and even the new Batman titles that shared the Valentine's season slate. Tinder, Hinge, and all Match Group apps banned every profile linked to his phone numbers within 48 hours, issuing a rare public statement on romance fraud. Meanwhile, the Leviev Diamond family filed a trademark lawsuit, furious that their name now ranked next to biggest dating con in history. Public sympathy landed squarely with the victims until Simon flipped the storyline again. Barely a week after the film's release, he showed up on Cameo, hawking custom birthday shoutouts for $199 a pop. The backlash was instant, but Cameo doubled down. Customers choose whom they endorse, the company said, and bookings poured in. Reportedly, Leviev cleared 6 figures in his first quarter of digital cameos, prompting think pieces on whether notoriety had replaced talent as an influencer currency. As cameras swiveled toward him, Simon tried to rewrite the script, claiming in a GQ interview that he was no monster, just a misunderstood Bitcoin millionaire. But the damage was baked into culture. Memes of bloodstained bodyguard Peter flooded TikTok, and Hacker Swipe Left Forever hit 1 billion views by summer 2022. For law enforcement, the documentary proved even more potent than red tape extradition. Dozens of fresh victims came forward, providing the paper trail prosecutors had lacked. Yet if you think a streaming scandal ends a con, think again, because the years after Netflix would get stranger, not safer. The Netflix credits rolled, but Simon Leviev refused to exit stage left. Within days, he minted scandal into side hustle, opening a Cameo account where birthday shoutouts cost $199 and corporate pep talks fetched $2,000. Outrage only juiced sales. More than 140 customers bought videos in the first week, and analysts estimated 6-figure revenue by spring 2022. Meanwhile, the real Leviev Diamond dynasty struck back. In March 2024, Lev Leviev's daughter and son-in-law testified in Tel Aviv District Court, accusing Simon of pirating their surname and corroding decades of brand trust. The civil suit filed originally in 2022 now seeks multi-million shekel damages and a worldwide injunction against him ever using the name again. Legal trouble compounded last Halloween. On 31 October 2024, an Israeli judge ordered Simon to repay roughly $414,000, about $110K, to an ex-girlfriend who proved he drained her accounts under the same "enemies are after me" ruse. The landmark ruling didn't just reimburse cash-it-assigned monetary value to emotional carnage, a first in Israeli romance fraud jurisprudence. He tried flipping the narrative yet again, this time by suing Instagram after hackers kept locking his profile. But in 2023, a Tel Aviv court tossed the case and billed him for Meta's legal fees when he failed to appear. Simon vowed to appeal, claiming he never got the summons. Even with courts closing in, the hustler chased fresh spotlight. Industry insiders leaked a 2025 reality dating pitch codenamed Love Without Limits, allegedly shot in Dubai with crypto sponsors. Streamers balked, but rumors still swirl on influencer gossip boards. Add plastic surgery whispers fans swear his jawline looks suspiciously sharper in new selfies, and the myth keeps mutating like a meme that won't die. Yet the darkest legacy isn't Simon's brand, it's the copycats. Europol reports romance fraud complaints up 9% in 2024, with several cases mirroring Leviev's exact script bodyguard photos, emergency loans, and all. Investigators call it the Netflix effect. Crooks watched the documentary, studied the blueprint, and simply relaunched it under new usernames. The question now shifts from what he did to why it still works. To answer that, we have to leave court filings behind and dive straight into brain chemistry. The psychology that turns red flags into rose petals. Ready to peel back the human wiring that powers every love bomb con? That's next. Romance fraud detectives will tell you the saddest truth first. Intelligence offers almost no immunity. That's because Simon Leviev wasn't hacking spreadsheets. He was hacking the limbic system, the the ancient feel first, think later circuitry that still governs every swipe right thrill. Attachment override. Humans are wired to trade vulnerability for safety, a reflex formed long before credit cards existed. When affection floods in at warp speed, voice notes every hour, surprise roses the size of a sofa, oxytocin and dopamine spike together. Those chemicals switch the brain's threat filter from verify to embrace, leaving logic in the dust. Pleasure panic loop. Enter the crisis text. My enemies are after me. Cortisol surges, forging a stress bond that feels indistinguishable from devotion. Behavioral scientists call it intermittent reinforcement. The same push-pull rhythm casinos use to keep gamblers glued to the slots. Love, fear, relief, repeat. Each cycle digs the hook deeper. Cognitive dissonance trap. Once a victim wires the first $10 K, self-image is on the line. Admitting a mistake wounds the ego, so the mind invents rationalizations. He'll pay me back next week. We're practically engaged. Economists label this the sunk cost fallacy. Scammers call it step 2. Social proof blindness, Instagram blue checks, designer backdrops, shared contacts who seem legit. Each cue whispers that the story must be real. In group psychology terms, that's informational conformity. When stakes are high and facts are fuzzy, we copy whatever appears normal. The jet photo isn't just envy bait, it's a forged reference letter. Stack those 4 levers and even a seasoned lawyer can find herself pleading for a higher credit limit at 3 a.m. Not because she's naive, but because her neural chemistry has been turned against her. But knowledge is its own antidote. If a grand romantic gesture ever arrives wrapped in urgency, hit pause. Let curiosity outrun dopamine. And remember, genuine affection feels like oxygen steady, mutual, and free, not like fireworks timed to an alarm. Pause the headlines for a moment and picture this. A narrow cobblestone lane, somewhere you've never been but swear you've dreamed about. Rain drizzles just enough to make the street lamps glow like halos. You duck into a tiny cafe, shove your phone deep into your coat pocket, and let the door's brass bell announce your escape from the algorithm. The air smells of cinnamon and roasted beans. At the far corner, a calico cat naps beneath a shelf lined with secondhand paperbacks. You settle into the window seat. Outside, strangers hurry past with umbrellas inverted by the wind, each one chasing something urgent, just as you were minutes ago. But in here, urgency feels impolite. The barista sets down a flat white and a small saucer of orange peel biscotti. Steam curls into the lamplight, and for the first time all day, your shoulders loosen. You reach for a dog-eared novel someone left behind. The pages crackle like soft vinyl. It happens to be a translation of Gary Nguyen's short story collection, Just Hear Me Out, one of 13 books she's published before turning 29. Her writing is gentle but unafraid, the kind of prose that admits life can bruise you, yet still argues for wonder. A line catches your breath. The heart is loudest in quiet rooms. You look up, and the cat is now staring straight at you, as if to second the motion. If that sentence lands, you might want to find more of her work titles, like a luxury item called Me Wait Patiently on Amazon for nights just like this. They aren't cautionary tales about con men. They're invitations to tune your inner radar, to hear yourself before anyone else speaks. And perhaps that is the real opposite of a love bomb, a slow-burn friendship with your own thoughts. Because when the world shouts, act now, the smartest answer is sometimes a whisper, not yet. If Simon Leviev's saga teaches one lesson, it's that illusions thrive wherever validation feels scarce and fast affection feels like destiny. Private jets, blood-soaked selfies, frantic voice notes. Each detail was a pyrotechnic flash designed to dazzle the limbic system and drown out slow-burn logic. But fireworks burn out, oxygen sustains life. Real love arrives calm, asks gentle questions, and never invoices your bank app at 3 a.m. So the next time a near stranger crowns you soulmate before sunrise, pause. Ask yourself, is this spark meant to warm me or blind me? Let curiosity outrun dopamine. Let caution outrun urgency. Because armor against deception isn't cynicism. It's the quiet confidence that your worth doesn't hinge on anybody's borrowed jet. If this story stirred you, share your own red flag moments in the comments. Someone scrolling past at midnight might need your hindsight more than you know. And if you crave deeper, slower reflections than any algorithm can push, remember that paperback and the Café Garin Guyon's pages are waiting, steady as breath, until the next love bomb headline tries to steal our attention again. Stay curious, stay grounded, and swipe wisely.